Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 39 from book 5 of Caesar's De Bello Gallico. So remember, at this point in the Gallic Wars, we're talking about Ambiorix's revolt. So just to give you a little bit of an overview, we're looking at 54 BCE, and we've seen that Ambiorix has attacked this specific fort that we have highlighted here, right on the sort of the far edge of where the Romans have been going in Belgium, near the land of the Eburones, right? He ambushed Sabinus and Cotta, drew them out from the fort. At this point, they're both dead, right? The Roman army they had with them, right? That legion has been wiped out. And there were a couple of survivors who were able to escape and run and try to warn the rest of the Romans. But the big thing is that Ambiorix had left the scene of the ambush, and he's gone to rally more troops. And at this point, he now has an army that he's building up, and he's going to march it and try to do the next trick, to do the same trick on the next fort, which is going to be Cicero's fort. Okay, so before we dive too far into it, like I always tell you in these videos, the first thing you want to do is just make sure that you have the vocab under control, that you feel really comfortable about it. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You could do a pre-read and make your own vocab list, or you could just use one online. Quizlet has a bunch of them. There's a lot of good commentaries out there that will help you with the vocab, but you just want to make sure that you feel comfortable enough with the vocab that you know what all the words are. It's just really difficult to translate if you don't know them. So always start there, do some practice, whatever you have to do. The other thing I'd always recommend that you do is read this aloud, right? I know a lot of times these videos are for AP, and it's a little hard to find time to do it, but you want to bring, if you have a little bit to spare, I always think you should make the time. Bring the language to life, right? Read it aloud, find a partner, someone you can read to, and have them read it back to you. This way you can work on your speaking, your pronunciation, your listening skills, and all that kind of ties into understanding the Latin better and not just translating into your head. Okay, when it really comes time to translate, the trick I always tell you to do is do the read and reread method. So you start by reading through this whole chapter, write down any problem areas you have, whether it's vocab or grammar or what have you, and then when you're done, try to figure out where you went wrong by looking at your list, right? If it's a vocab, that's pretty easy. Just look up the words, right? Again, commentaries will help. Same with grammar. If you get stuck, look at a grammar commentary, anything to try to unpack where you went wrong. And then you read the story again, or in this case, the chapter again, right? And when you do that over and over again and repeat that process, the list of your problem areas should get smaller and smaller until you're able to read this start to finish without having to write down much of anything. That's how you know you're in a really good place. And if you are doing this for the AP exam, that'll ensure that you're locking it into your long-term memory and not just reading through to translate and then forgetting what you read. Okay, so it's always what I advise you to do. It works. It's the best bet to make sure that you're in a good spot. All right, so if you haven't done all that, pause the video, go work on it on your own. But I'm going to continue on. If you continue on with me, you should have already read through this and just use what I'm going to do as a double check. Not that my translation is ever perfect, but it should give you a little guidelines so that you can feel pretty comfortable to move on. Okay, so like I said, at this point in the narrative, we have Ambiorix has gone off, and he's got he's gathering more troops to go and attack Cicero's camp. Okay, so we start with Itaque, right? And so you have Itaque confestim dimisis nuntis ad Cutrones, Grudios, Levacos, Plumoxios, Gaidumnos. Okay, so you have and immediately, right? He sent off messengers, right? So you have immediately with the messengers having been sent off to the Cutrones, I'm assuming that's what it is, the Grudii, the Levaci, and the Plumoxi, along with this other group called the Gaidumni. Again, you don't need to necessarily know that unless you're really into the history. These are smaller local tribes that you would find in the general area. Okay, so you have all these people, and then you have sort of a side thought here. You have qui omnes sub eorum imperio sunt, who are all, right, all of them are under their rule, eorum imperio. That means the rule of Ambiorix, right, and sort of his people here, right? So all these different people with all the messengers being sent out, they collect, right? So you have Kogan, they collect. When you have quam plus the maximus there, it means as large as possible is really what it means. So they were able to collect as large or as great of bands as possible, maximus manus, right, as great of bands of men as possible, okay? And you have et de improviso ad Ciceronis hiberna ad volant, right? So the ad volant is they fly, they go quickly, and unexpectedly, right? The de improviso really means like they're unseen or unexpectedly they do this. They fly to the hiberna Ciceronis, right? To the winter quarters of Cicero, right? His camp is really what it is, okay? And then you have this side thought where you have the death of Titurius, right? So you have nondum ad eum fama de Titori morte perlata, right? So with the death of Titurius having been brought, nondum, not yet. So again, with or sorry, not the report, it's the or sorry, not the death, it's the fama is what hasn't been brought. So the report of the death of Titurius had not yet been brought to him, meaning to Cicero. So when you set the scene here, Ambiorix has been able to rally a bunch of troops, all these neighbors who are under that rule. I remember he's been working with the Nervii too. So he's gathering up the local tribes, and they get as many bands as possible, or the largest bands as they possibly can of war bands, right, of men, the Maximus Manus, right? They collect it, and then they set off. And again, it's unexpected because Cicero doesn't quite know that they're coming yet, right? They go to his fort, and nothing has reached him yet. So that's the last part. So Cicero has no idea that Ambiorix is coming or what's about to happen, okay? Then you continue on. You have hic quoque accidit, quod fuit necesse, ut non nulle militis qui lignationis munitionisque causa in silvas discessent. Right, discessent rather. Let's say that right. Then you have repentino equitum adventu interciperentur. Okay, so you have it happened to this one, right? Also, which was necessary, right? It's talking about Cicero, right? That which was necessary, right? It basically means like the thing that everyone thought was going to happen. That some of his soldiers, so again, no newly, great word, literally not none, right? Or some soldiers who had gone out, right? There you have the discessent, right? They had departed out in Silvas, into the woods, for the sake of, right, causa, for the sake of gathering wood, right, lignationis, and fortifying things, right? Munitionis could be like fortifications, right? So they're basically out wood gathering. Now, to quickly pause, that should sound really familiar. The wood gathering is exactly what happened with Sabinus and Cato when they get caught off guard, and Ambiorix first attacks them. Okay, so you have some soldiers who had gone out for the sake of fortifying the camp, basically, and getting this wood gathering. Suddenly, right, repentino, suddenly they were intercepted, right, interciperentur. They were intercepted by the arrival of cavalry, right, equitum adventu. So here comes Ambiorix charging in with his cavalry. The Romans who are outside of the fort, they have no idea what's about to happen or that an ambush is coming. They're caught off guard. And here again, we see Ambiorix attacking those poor woodcutters, right? The people outside the fort, and they're going to get killed. Okay. Then you continue on. You have his circumventis magna manu ebarones nervii aduatuci atque horum omnium socii et clientes legionem appugnare incipiunt. Okay, so you have the ablative absolute to start. You have with these men is really kind of what it's talking about, having been surrounded by a great band, a magna manu, right, a great war band, right? The ebarones, the nervii, the aduatuci, right? And and the allies and clients, the soci et clientes of all of them. So it's all these people plus all their allies, all their clients, everyone. They begin to besiege, appugnare, the legionem, the legion, right? So with all these, with these having been surrounded, right? So basically all the Romans are cut off and surrounded. Now the whole group shows up. They have all their allies, and Cicero's camp is completely surrounded, right? It has very strong vibes of the beginning of book 5 when Sabinus and Cato are also surrounded in a similar way. Okay. Then you have nostri caleriter ad arma concurrent valum conscendunt. There we go. But here, very similarly, right, to the other ambush, you have nostri, our men. Remember Caesar, when he talks about his men, it's always our men, right? The boys, right? They're out there fighting. He's always quick to praise them. So they quickly run ad arma, to arms, right? So they're called to arms. They get all their weapons on. Now here you have a syndeton, right? So you're missing the and is the idea, and that kind of gives a little speed to this line to show how fast they're doing this. So they run to arms, and they ascend the wall, the rampart, right? So they're up on the fortifications now, and they're defending their camp. Then we end with this. You have aegre is die sustentator, quod omnem spem hostes in celeritate ponebant atque hanc adepti victoriam in perpetuum se fore victores confidebant. Okay? So you have with difficulty, aigre there, the adverb with difficulty, this day is dies, right? This day is endured, sustentator, right? So the day is endured. Kind of interesting. He's personifying the day, right? The day is endured, but it's really the Roman men, right? They're protecting the fort, and the Romans survive. Okay, and he gives the reason why. He says because the enemy, the hostes, they ponebant, they placed all their hope, omnem spem, right? All hope in speed, in celeritate. So the Gauls and Ambiorix were really hoping they'd be able to rush in and catch the Romans so completely off guard they could kill them. They don't do that, right? They're not quite fast enough to have that happen, but they're still pretty confident in the siege here. But the Romans are able to withstand what's happening here. Okay, then you have the Aquiline, and this. And again, sorry, and it's talking about the enemy there. So having attained victory, right? This victory. So in other words, they're thinking having obtained the victory, they were confident, confidebant, right? The victors were confidebant, right? Victores. The victors were confident that they were going to be victorious, right? There was going to be, and again, the fore there is futurum esse. It's sort of the shortened form of it, but they believed that they themselves were going to be victorious in perpetuity, right? They were going to be forever able to kind of win this battle. And just to clean that line up, I feel like we stumbled a bit here. Victores is what's going on with the in perpetuity there. So if we come back, the adepti is going with the hostes. So let me just say this correctly for you, right? So you're saying having obtained this victory, right, kind of winning over the first attack on the Romans here, having obtained this victory, they were confident that, right? You have this indirect statement here. They were confident that they themselves would be, or were going to be, fore again is futurum esse. They were going to be victores. They were going to be victors in perpetuity, right? Forever. So that's kind of the way you want to translate that last line. The Gauls are feeling really confident that they're going to be, they're always going to be victors. We took out the Romans. We're going to do the exact same thing again. Okay. So it's a pretty short chapter here, 39. Nothing particularly crazy happening other than Ambiorix has finally, showed up, and you can see sort of the repetition of what's happening, and it kind of leads into some questions to think about. There's not a ton that I really would say you need to reflect on this chapter, but there's some things worth noting, and one of them is what we've been saying: the similarity in the attack against Cicero's men, and what happened with Sabinus and Cotta's fort, right, attacking those poor woodcutters. There's a lot of similarity there. It's got vibes of Ambiorix thinking, if it's not broke, why fix it, right? So he's like, hey, it worked once, why wouldn't we do the exact same thing? It's sort of a copy and paste. But the speed of Ambiorix is really on display here, right? Cicero is caught completely off guard. He has no clue what happened to Sabinus and Cotta, even though we saw that some Romans did escape. Ambiorix is faster. He's already gathered, the army, more troops, and marched or kind of speed marched or rode, I guess you'd say, on the horses with his cavalry to get to Cicero. Cicero has absolutely no idea. So Cicero's at a major disadvantage here because he doesn't know what Ambiorix is doing, and you're going to see it's a copy and paste job of, let's see, if Ambiorix is able to trick Cicero just like he did Sabinus and Cotta. The other interesting thing, at least I find it interesting, is that Caesar here only refers to Sabinus and doesn't mention Cotta, which is kind of funny, right? So when he's talking about Cicero, he says with Cicero being unaware of the report of the death of Sabinus. Again, I think that kind of leans to the idea that he still thinks Sabinus is an idiot, it was all kind of his fault what happened in the beginning. But again, Cotta doesn't get mentioned. And here we have this direct comparison, right? So I'm saying here you want to notice that there's Caesar's directly comparing the attack on Cicero with that of Sabinus and Cotta, specifically with Sabinus, right? We kind of know what's going to happen with the trick of, oh, I'm your friend, come on out, right? Come out of the fort that Ambiorix is going to do. We know that Sabinus was dumb enough to fall for it. So you're going to see what happens with Cicero, right? We'll see the differences as we go. As we go through the next few chapters, you'll see how both men handle it differently. But Caesar is very sort of deliberately setting up this idea of what Cicero does versus what Sabinus did. Okay, and we all know that Sabinus died because of it, right? So it's just an interesting backdrop to this chapter. Okay. So if you have any questions at all, anything you're worried about or concerned about, put it in the comments below. I'm always happy to help you. But otherwise, hopefully this made some sense to you and it kind of matched what you had with your translation. And again, follow all the tips I put in the beginning of the video. It really does help you out. But at the end of the day, again, you're just trying to see if you can read through this whole chapter, start to finish, without needing any help. That's how you know you're in a really good spot and you're ready to move on. Okay? Let me know if you need anything, but otherwise, good luck with it.